Okay, so we're right at 9 o'clock. Let's go ahead and call to order and I pledge of allegiance. Flag is in the corner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice for all. Let's just go around, maybe introduce each other once again, so that we're all familiar with each other. Joe, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Joe Onzik, the Finance Director for the town.
Michael Hauser, Ocean Harbor, middle of the island, and this is my second term, or whatever you call it, what do they appoint you? A bean counter, recovering accountant, what do you need? So, but happy to be here, thank you.
Mary Ann Shealy. We're on the south end in the Estero Bayside. I'm still working remote. I'm a tax accountant out of Chicago, but we live here full time.
Sweet.
I'm Jeff Taylor, recently retired. I always enjoy saying that. I guess I got nominated as the finance or the audit committee chairman, and we're here full time down on Curlew Street.
I'm Barbara Puffer. I'm at Estero Cove. I've been here 33 years, 20 of it serving on the board in many financial positions. That was not my career.
Debbie Dutton. I live on the south end in Laguna Shores. I am retired, but I also work. So I put in a lot of time at Ford Motor Company in finance and accounting, and now I'm a finance manager at Lakeside Books, which is the biggest book printing company in the country. So if you pick up a book, it's likely to have been printed by my company.
John R. King, Town Council Liaison. I live at Islands End. I was retired till I picked up this part-time job.
That's awesome. Brian Thomas. We live on Palermo, and I'm still actively working. My company's based in Illinois, but we spend about 9 months here and then 3 months still in downtown Chicago.
I'm Jack Leeson. I live on the south end of the island. We moved here in 2020, right after COVID, right after, and I'm retired. So.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming today. Today we want to go through the approval of minutes. Joe, do you read through those? Do I read through? Does everybody have a chance to look at those?
Well, we don't need to read through them, but
Okay.
if anybody has any corrections, then this would be the time to suggest them.
The one thing that I would say is instead of Jeff Lesson, it's Jack Lesson. I can redline that. Make sure we have the name right.
Yeah, Jack. It's Jack. Okay, that's right.
Any questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
Sure. So moved.
Approved by, motion by Barbara. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. So they're adopted. What is today's date?
So someone takes minutes after the meeting? Is that?
They do. There's a recording secretary that listens to the recording.
Just want to make sure,
And then
because last time it was so much more formal.
Oh, right.
And okay, that's done. Go.
Thank you.
Public comment, anyone? Items for discussion, Finance Director reports. First up, next will be the criteria for new ERP system. And then thirdly, the town council's commented about utilizing the audit committee more. Joe, do you want to jump into the Finance Director report?
Sure. I wasn't really sure what you would like me to report on. This is we're kind of venturing into new territory. I've heard that in the past the audit committee was normally just focused on the audit itself, and that was the beginning and end of it. But we, according to town council's direction and our desire, we would like to involve you as much as you'd like to be involved. And so I've made an effort to try to provide some information to you, and then going forward, if there's any changes you would like me to make or add additions, I can certainly do that. So this report basically is just to formally report to you that the town council did accept the audit report for fiscal year 2022 as you had recommended, and they had done so at the December 18th meeting. They also did accept the recommendation at that same meeting, December 18th, to pursue looking into a new ERP system. And so we've begun some work on that. And then I have a little more detail I can report on as the next item here. The fiscal year 2023 audit, again, according to your recommendation, the town council did approve the renewal of the engagement of Malden Jenkins to be the auditors for the fiscal year 2023. They are tentatively scheduled to begin the field work in April, where we want to make sure that we complete the audit by June 30th, because that is the absolute deadline. We don't want to be late again this year. There's no reason to be late, but we also wanted to give us enough time to go through all of the emergency expenditures that have taken place in 2023. Just in the first pass, there's like over 1,400 of them that all have to be just looked into, make sure we have all the supporting documentation. We've been doing that as we go, but this is like our one last pass through it to make sure we have everything, because this also becomes part of the single audit for FEMA purposes. And the way this worked, because it was an emergency situation, FEMA did not give us any project numbers to start with. And so we're having to go back and retroactively assign project numbers to everything, which is part of what we're doing. So it's just going to be a long, tedious process, and we don't have a very big staff. So that's why we need as much time as possible to complete that. But that's what we're working on, and that kind of ties into the next paragraph about review and allocation of emergency expenditures. We're working with our consulting group, Tidal Basin, on that. They're very good, very helpful in understanding the FEMA side of things and helping us to navigate through that. And FEMA has consultants who meet with us weekly, sometimes twice a week, right on site, and they've been very good as well. And the state sends representatives down with us as well. So it's a team effort. It's an incredible amount of detail that needs to be compiled for all of this, as I'm sure you can imagine. And
one question, two questions on that. I guess question number one is, have there been any pushback from the FEMA consultants or Tidal Basin as to how things have been recorded, or how things, disagreements in that vein? And then my second question would be is kind of looking forward towards FEMA and, comments that I've heard in the past about, FEMA can come in 3 years behind, 5 years behind, audit you, and then say, no, this isn't correct, and then demand money back. And, what's your experience with that, or what's the overall town's experience with that?
Well, maybe to start with your last comment, that's one of the reasons why we're focusing so much effort now, is that FEMA, as well as the state, as well as Tidal Basin, what we're all trying to do is collect all the documentation, and they have a portal where you then submit the documentation. So we're not going to wait until the audit to then gather everything up and give to them. We're we're being proactive, and this is how it's being done now anyway. I mean, that's the preferred way, is you supply everything for the audit now, right up front. And so that way you're making sure that you have the documentation for the procurement, you have the formal authorizations. If it was over 25,000 that was authorized by town council, they make sure you have the proper signatures, the purchase orders. So everything is in line. The reimbursements you have the canceled checks for the reimbursement. So that's part of everything that we're collecting, which is why this is very time consuming. But it's necessary, and we're happy to do it to comply. The only issues we've run into have been in the sense of emergency procurement, and it's really related to town hall, the temporary town hall. There was some pushback from the state that some of the procurement that we could have, I mean, in their view, we could have taken more time to go out and procure it, like the trailers, perhaps like go out to bid or that type of thing. But in reality, in terms of the management, they're working as hard as they could to find things they're doing. The quotes is in an emergency situation, from their understanding, they didn't have time to procure it. And so as we explained all this to the state, they understood then the urgency of it, and so then they kind of pulled back and said, no, that's fine, and then they agreed with how it was done because it was an emergency. And then there's also what they call an exigent situation, and that was for like this building, getting this open in time for the school, to meet the deadline for the school opening. So that also, from FEMA's perspective, met the criteria for emergency procurement. So we had some existing contractors that we had previously used that were selected through a bid process, but not specifically to restore this, but we utilized those existing contracts to get this work done as soon as it could possibly get done. And even with that, there were delays, unavoidable delays. But because that was considered an exigent situation, according to the FEMA guidelines, they were agreeable to that. But everything else, it's got to be procured properly. We've got to go out to bid. We've got to do the RPs if it's professional services. And this is what we're dealing with now, and why we've kind of all of a sudden are slowing down, because we've got to go through all those steps first. But we need to do it properly, to follow our own procurement guidelines, and so we're doing that. Did I answer
Yes.
all your questions? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. And then for FEMA, I thought I just made a list of projects on the second page, just to give you a sampling of how they kind of laid out all the projects that they've identified. And so the process that's involved here is they do an analysis. They try to determine what the cost of restoring all of these items would be, and then from that basis they determine the amount of reimbursement that we're eligible for. And so this is a long, tedious process. Some of it is extremely tedious, where it's by GPS location. I mean, the street repairs, I mean, they need photographs with GPS locations on every single photograph of every single pothole of every single thing that needs to be repaired. So it's just incredible in that respect. Some of it is easy, like the Palm Avenue restroom trailer. I mean, that was fairly easy to determine. So they're in the process of assigning dollar amounts to all these projects, and once that's all agreed upon, they become obligated projects, and then that's the amount that we have to work with. The town has chosen to combine, I think it's about, I don't know if it was about a dozen parks projects, and I think, did I list that separately here?
F&B Parks and Recreation?
Yes, so that's where they combined, there were several individual parks, but they combined them into all one project. And so we still have to have evaluations of individual parks to determine the amount that we're eligible to be reimbursed for, but it's all combined into one large project that they call a 428 project. and then the amount of money that we're eligible for, it's kind of becomes a pool of dollars, and then from there, we can use it to do whatever we need to in that respect for all of those combined. We don't have to do them as individual projects, but just one large project.
Does 90% mean that we pay 90% or they pay 90%?
They pay the 90%. That's
Otherwise, it's 100%?
well, the only thing that's 100% that I'm aware of was at the very beginning, where they pay 100%. The rest was actually, I think it started out being we had to pay 85%, and then it went to 90% as we're moving further away from it. The state has a share also. I want to say they pay half of the, so in other words, if it was, trying to remember my details. So if at the point it was 85%, then the state was going to pay like 12.5%, we'd pay 12.5%. Now that it's 90%, the state would pay 5%, and we'd pay 5%. So it's a small percentage at this point.
So it's only 5%?
It is,
Okay.
it is. And then we also have applied for forgiveness, they call it a waiver of our percentage. We haven't heard back regarding their decision on that, but that's something that we have applied for since we can, so we're trying to do everything we can to get as much assistance as possible.
Is that from the state or from FEMA?
That would be from the state. So the state, if they so choose, they can waive that, and then they would pay that additional amount. So just kind of large dollar amounts. To date, we've received $13.9 million of FEMA reimbursements and about $9.5 million of insurance proceeds. So the total between the two is almost $23.5 million. And what we've actually spent in terms of emergency expenditures is $23 million. So we're cash flow wise, it's very close at this point. And that's my concern going forward, is we just have to be very careful in how we're managing cash and managing these projects.
Absolutely. One thought on this is probably, as you start to look, this is part of the portfolio management that you were talking about last time?
Well, no, but the portfolio management, that phrase I think I was more speaking of was actually part of the investment portfolio, but there's really not much there to invest. So,
Okay. I'm sorry, when you were talking about that, my head was around managing these projects and cash flow and percent complete and estimate to complete.
Talking about the new ERP system?
No, like taking these projects and then assigning what the actual budget is, what
Yes.
what the obligation is,
Yes.
what the expenditure is, percent of that that's been paid, percent of that that's actually complete, and then what the estimate to complete that project is.
That's something that we're working towards. We don't have that. That is, but absolutely necessary, because that becomes the basis of like a cash flow model
Yeah,
going
absolutely.
forward. So that most of this is still in the process of being determined, like what amount would FEMA even give us, so we know what we have to work with. We have to then kind of lay out a plan of how we're going to go about accomplishing all these things. So I 100% agree with what you just described.
Yeah, so we can maybe table that and talk about it, another item that we can talk about when we start talking about what the role going forward is.
Okay, sure, all right.
Joe, do you know, was there any, with the insurance?
Yes.
Do we have any difficulties there?
Well,
And I'm thinking also for the go forward, because I've reviewed a little bit of that in the past, but at a different time and era, and this committee got stiff-armed a lot back then, because it really, in many people's lives, didn't really have a stated purpose or a charter. So, we were primarily by de facto at the end of it all, it was like, okay, we're just here to rubber stamp the audit results, without any questions, mind you, or very few. So, just curious about that, because I know that, it's a big number. I'm just wondering how we fared so far.
well, the town did hire an insurance adjuster to also look at all of the claims. I know one of the issues we had was we were underinsured.
Yes.
And so we did not have enough insurance to cover really the losses.
Right.
it looks like for the most part, the insurance company did pay out like to the limits, but there are areas where there could be more paid out, as according to the insurance adjuster. There might have been damages that were not necessarily recorded, or when they come out and do their assessment, there might have been things they missed. But to the point that we probably were already paid out the max. I'm not sure that we can recover all that much more, but the insurance adjuster has identified several things that we're reviewing now that we're going to go back and review with the insurance company and see if there's any more that we can recoup.
And we're still at the same entity for the town's insurance?
It is. It's FMIT.
FMIT.
It's, yes, so it's with the
Through the
league.
municipal league?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, they've been very good to work with, but, you know, we've reached the limit with them as far as what they'll pay out. Well, I think
So
there's-
is there any ongoing conversation about limits going forward then?
Well, I've not been directly involved. It's been more with town manager and insurance, but we are increasing the insurance
Okay.
coverage. Of course, we don't have much left to cover at the
Right,
moment,
right.
but that is what we're doing. We're,
Sure.
you know, especially with the new town hall, that, you know, we put out the exact amount of the value to be insured for with the new temporary town hall and that type of thing. So going forward, we're trying to be more proactive in assessing everything, but they're more accurately. There was a point I was going to make. Oh, well, one of the interesting things is FEMA reduces their reimbursement to us by the amount that we receive from insurance.
Sure.
So we can do everything we can to get the most possible from insurance, but all that ends up doing is reducing
Also-
the amount from FEMA, so we really aren't going to come out ahead. So it's almost in some respect, it's kind of a waste of time to use an insurance adjuster, because now we have to pay his fee on top of ending up reducing the amount from FEMA. So, but it's something that FEMA expects you to do in the sense that to maximize the amount of insurance. So we're not doing anything inappropriate. It's just
Yeah, I was going to mention, they probably have some requirements or recommendations for the town to purchase as much as they can to
yes,
mitigate their piece as well.
yes, that's what they would expect you to do.
Is there any penalties if from their standpoint, by not doing that? Because we were underinsured.
Yes, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not aware that there's anything specific to that. Well, then to just move forward in here with I thought it would be good to just kind of give you a description of the available funding sources that we have for us. We have $6.7 million of a capital improvement loan that had been approved a few years ago, and this was for the development of this Bay Oaks recreational facility. It was for the development of Times Square and also Bayside Park. That's what that original $10 million loan was secured for. We have $6.7 million left of it that needs to be used by May 1st. Beyond that, and that is the limit to which this loan can be extended. Anything beyond that then could not be reimbursed for, and so we would just lose out on that loan. There's really not very much that we can utilize that loan for, because it has to be limited to Bayside Park. Bayside Park, we did restore that, we did have expenditures for that, but we received that $500,000 grant from the Volunteer Florida, which covered most of that expense. So the Bay Oaks recreational facility, there's really nothing new there. Most of this has been covered by insurance and FEMA. There might be some improvements. I think they're talking about getting a pickleball court put in, and some things that could be done by May 1st, and so that we may be able to utilize the loan for that. That was part of the original plan. So I just wanted to give a little description of that. There is a $5 million.
There's a question over here, Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What happens after May 1st if we don't have any expenditures with the loan?
Well, it's just that the loan expires in the sense that we cannot draw anything down from it. So it's there to utilize. but
Use it or
what-
lose it?
Yeah, exactly, right.
But we still have to pay it back.
Well, we only pay back what we've used.
Right.
So, it was a $10 million loan, so so far 3.3 million has been used, so that's what we need to pay back. There's already a predetermined repayment schedule that's already built into the budget. It's about $50,000 a month. We've already been making payments towards it, and so it just means that we'll pay it off sooner if we don't use the whole 10 million. The $5 million loan is one that we received from the Department of Emergency Management. It's a 0% interest loan, and the way this works is we can use it for any of our FEMA projects. So it helps with cash flow, because with FEMA, they reimburse us after we expend the funds. And then we have to show them proof that the funds have been expended, and then all the supporting documentation to make sure that it's an eligible expense. So there's that time process where they have to review all of that, make sure that what we spent it on is appropriate, we followed all the rules, that the money was actually expended, we have the canceled checks, then they reimburse us. So there's that lag where we put out the money and now we're waiting for reimbursement. This loan can be used to cover that expense. And how the loan is repaid is once we do receive the money from FEMA, it goes directly to paying back this loan. So we never see it in our bank account, it goes directly to repaying this loan.
And then you could use that money again
No,
once you pay it?
it's a one-time, it's not a revolving loan, so it's only $5 million, so it's not gonna go very far, especially if you've got some large projects. But we have that. Then we start moving into this far out as 10 years, if that's approved. As soon as we applied for the loan and were awarded the loan, the day after we received the money, I said, can I please apply for the one-year extension? They said, no, it's too soon to apply for the extension. So, but I will do so as soon as they allow us to, because we just don't have the ability to repay the entire amount. We're only using $3.5 million this year, and that may be done. So there's just a lot of unknowns at this point, but we do need to spend it by the end of the year.
But that could be used to pay for that 5% of the ones that weren't completely funded on.
In a few days after, an excellent candidate is currently working for the Federal Housing Authority in Fort Myers. She's worked for the State Department. She's a very good accountant. She's had several positions, and she interviewed very well. She really understands accounting, fund accounting, so and grant accounting especially. So she'll be really an asset to us in helping us navigate through this. And then we're also going to be adding a grants and payroll coordinator, someone to just help with the more of the administrative side of grants. We have an internal candidate, or a potential for an internal candidate that we are hoping will work out, because it would just help shore up that need there in terms of the documentation side of things. We have several grants that we need to keep up with, that the finance department is becoming more aware of. In the past, the individual department heads apparently were responsible for managing their own grants. But with this change in the turnover of department heads, things are starting to fall through the cracks. They didn't know about these grants. So we're realizing it's really not good to have it distributed that way. We should really have a centralized grant administration service within the finance department, so that we can keep tabs of it, make sure things are submitted properly, and also in terms of cash flow, because these are all reimbursement-based grants. And so if we're late in submitting them, it may be acceptable for the granting agency, but it's not acceptable from a cash flow perspective, because we've incurred the expenditures and we need to be reimbursed for them as soon as possible. So I think having a person there would help with that as well. Utility billing, that's been going well. We've been working very closely with Lee County utilities. They were brought to our attention a situation where I guess in the past, they have not been billed for the administrative services that we provide for them for sewer service that they provide to the people on the island. There was an elaborate contract that spells out exactly how it should be calculated, and whoever had been preparing it had not been going according to the contract. And so we had to go back a few years, recalculate it, and give them credits for, I think, going back, I forget if it's 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 years back. The small credits, but they totaled, I think, $66,000 over the period of time. And so we needed to make that right with Lee County, and so we did that. And then there were also, we needed to readjust and recalibrate the billing in terms of the percentage of time that our own employees were spending on the sewer maintenance and customer service that was provided. And so we worked very closely with the employees to determine those percentages for the allocation purposes. So in the end, I think what we have now to provide to Lee County, it's accurate as humanly possible. They're happy with it, and I think we've kind of renewed the relationship with them going forward, and which is a very important thing to do. So that concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
There's a statement down there about new software selected for the billing department?
Yes, oh, I'm sorry. Prior to our kind of taking over oversight, the previous utility billing manager had selected new software, and so we're going to be viewing, I guess it would be a demo to see what it's like, to make sure that would meet our needs. And the system they have is very difficult to work with, and they're having a terrible time with it, and then pulling information, and to the point where the software provider has to actually generate the bills for the billing department because they don't know how to do it on their own. And so we need to have a system that we can operate, that we understand how to operate, that we can pull data out of, that we can run reports on ourselves and not be so dependent on the software provider. So they found a new solution that apparently is a lot easier to use, but we'll see when we review the demo.
That was very thorough, thank you.
And then the next item would be the criteria for the new ERP system. And I probably, for all of you who are familiar with accounting and financial reporting, this is probably a no-brainer, everything that I've listed here. But if you can think of anything that maybe I haven't thought of that you think would be good to incorporate into our search for an ERP system, I'm more than happy to accept suggestions.
5 things that I went through it. I thought it was very, detailed, not detailed, but it was a good list. The 5 that I thought of were approvals of both accounts payable, accounts receivable, journal entries, security and controls, making sure that you have the right segregation of duties built in, and user responsibilities, and maintenance and administration. I know it's included in accounts receivable, but cash collections and being able to forecast what your overall cash collection is, who's behind, and what you have coming forward. You do have bank reconciliation up there, but cash forecasting would be another one.
Forecasting in general.
Yeah, budgeting and forecasting. That's a good one. Then additionally to this would be data cleansing. So taking all the data you have, let's say home or property owner's name, address, telephone number, information collected that way that has to go into the system. In the case of accounts receivable where you're leaning a property or something of that nature. So, all right, do you have a list of customers, you have a list of vendors, you have a list of employees? All of that needs to be synced up and needs to be, I call it cleansing. Make sure all the data fields are accurate. And then data conversion. What data has to go into the system from previous systems, or that, so like your FEMA list of information that you're collecting today, should that be historically kind of put into, I think you've included in this records management. So all of that needs to maybe be put into records management so you have a list of that going forward.
Yes, well, these are fantastic ideas. Thank you for outlining those. I agree.
I would say above and, outside the technical piece of it, when you go through the process, you might want to, just a thought, be more regional, figure out who Lee County is using, figure out what our satellite communities are using, because they might have not gone out for bid for a long time because they're too busy doing their work. But if you could have a collective group that is interested in exploring these things, and that way all of the different staff people at all the different municipalities are familiar with the same software. And if you need to borrow, like I've noticed that when we had the hurricane, the emergency people came down from wherever they come from, New York. But I'm just saying, if you lose somebody, you want to have somebody that you can put in there, even if it's temporary, that knows how to work the software,
Sure.
But it's not accounting-ish. It's more about plug and play with employees. Just a thought. But I don't know how you do that. Is there like a municipal league or something where you can have a group of other finance directors that you can call and say, hey, what software are you using? We're thinking about going and getting one. Do you want to be involved in the process? I'm not trying to slow it down, but
I'm familiar with a few of them. I can reach out to them, and then they probably have contacts. So there is a small network of local finance directors, and that's a great idea to reach out and to see what they're using, if they'd be interested in exploring together.
I don't think you're going to get a better deal
No.
how the software companies work. But at least you've got a collective group. So.
Well, thank you for your ideas on that.
What are your next steps in the overall process as far as identifying, evaluating, selecting?
Well, Frankie Kropacek, he is technically in charge of procurement. And I spoke with him, I gave him this list just to kind of give him a preliminary idea. And I mean, he is of the opinion that we could get something for under $25,000. I kind of doubt that. But to the extent that, I mean, if we can, then you could just go out and reach out to vendors, have them come in and do demos. But if it's more than $25,000, which I think it probably will be, then you need to issue a formal RFP with the formal scope of services. So all of these types of things would have to be just mentioned in there, and then we would have to see what types of proposals come in, and then go from there.
Okay, I've never seen anything for $25,000.
Yeah. It's like
It
a
was-
personal thing.
Shocking to me as well, but I
Okay.
What's the timeline? So when do you want to get it all done?
well,
Yesterday.
I mean, yeah, we need it as soon as possible, but the reality is we are just struggling day to day. So it's, I mean, our main focus has to be on getting through for the 2023 audit, and that will probably take up the majority of my time, and then there's the day to day. There's preparing the budget for next year. And so, all those things are normal, but what's extraordinary is we have the all of 2023 and all the emergency expenditures to get through, which is going to kind of really consume a lot of our time. So this is going to, I think, probably move along more slowly. I think we have a good foundation for an RFP, I think, if we incorporate this. And then if we put that out there, that takes probably maybe about a month to get that out and the responses back and then to review it. So now we're talking about maybe 2 months minimum to make a decision. And then from there, then it would be, I think, well, we would have to understand the cost and then how would we finance it. And then once that is determined, then
So
scheduling it.
when you talk about the emergency stuff,
Yes,
so can we leverage our accountants that are doing the audit to help with that process? Because they're gonna have to go back.
well, they technically they can't, they won't help because they'd be auditing their own work. So
Yeah.
Okay, that
we
makes
would
sense.
need, we would need other help. But we're just about to have a senior accountant on board. We've gone this entire time without one since I've been here. So that will really, really help. And then if we can get this other grants coordinator position in, that'll help. So as soon as we get those people in place, I think we can see a lot more progress being made. So I'm thinking, the audit will be done by June. That's the drop dead deadline. So if we can get the schedule where the conversion starts, or implementation, I should say, starts after that, maybe by the end of the year. That would be an optimistic.
I've seen other companies when they've done this, like your grants coordinator and the senior accountant, peel off 50% of their responsibility to be on the implementation. So that way, you go through the selection of the software, and assuming it's a second or third tier vendor, then you kind of work with them to implement it. Have those two people kind of be responsible for all of the, the data, the setup, the decision making as it goes through, to help you kind of, keep your staff focused on the day-to-day versus, what the implementation project is. But, it's not an overnight kind of thing.
No, and we do also need, what you're saying, like 50% of their time, because we would need some of their time for day-to-day as well, just so that we're not in this
Right.
situation that we're in perpetually. We just got to get ahead of it. There's so much to do in terms of just, I think, just getting our department up to the point where we understand all the projects, we understand the cash flow, we understand the budgeting, have all of that almost like a dashboard type, view, so we can see where we're all at, but we're nowhere near that, and it's gonna take everything we've got to get there. And part of it, of course, involves just plowing through all of this data, getting it organized and ready for audit, and I just think the next few months especially are going to be consumed by that. But this, if we get the RFP put out there, then, that can be going on and proposals coming in while we're working on that. And then we can do the review and move from there.
But to start the quoting process, though,
Yes.
you need a list of companies to quote. So your suggestion of asking around and saying,
Yes.
do you like, what systems do you use? Do you
Yes.
like them? If they say don't like them, obviously, we're never going to quote those people.
Yes.
Just how about our accountants? They see a lot of different stuff when they do other audits. They would know who the top 3.
That's true.
Yeah, you want to narrow it down to 5 or something. You don't want to go more than that.
Yeah.
That's true. So compile a list from,
That'll save you a lot of time.
yes, yes. Well, thank you for your ideas. I appreciate it.
I think kind of moving forward, next on the agenda is the comment around utilizing the audit committee more. And I guess maybe can we break this down into 2 parts? So during the last town council meeting that Joe and I attended, there was a comment that came from Councilman Adderholt asking, can we utilize the audit committee more? So Brian, to kind of your point, previously it was boxed into just selecting the audit committee and signing off on the audit. But more traditionally, if you look at larger companies or companies outside, even towns outside, use the audit committee for different functions and more governance, more risk, more financial reporting. And so that's the kind of,
It's the same thing I suggested at the end of the meeting last time.
Right, exactly. So in using that particular vein, I guess maybe break it down into two ways. You know, what should we be doing, and Joe, what do you need us to be doing?
And do we have a charter? Do we update that? Because right now it's pretty vague.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Update the charter, because right now it points
We're
to.
meeting once a month to approve audits and the auditors. That's,
I don't have it with me, but I could send it out to you. I did look in our town ordinance, and there is the phrase that's in there, which our town attorney kind of pointed out to me, is that I think they're looking for people to serve on the audit committee who has a background in financial management, so that they can advise the town council in that area, as well as like the other things like accounting and financial reporting, but financial management. So that's as broad as I think you can get. So I think it encompasses anything that you would like for it to, and what you feel comfortable with.
Well, I think some of it too comes down to, and not in a negative way, but disclosure, what access of what information we have available. That was sometimes a little challenging in the past, and it never became an issue until we asked for something, and then there was kind of a lag or delay, and then this gentleman would appear and basically explain to us why we didn't need any of that information or didn't need to know, and it never really sat very well with the committee members. So,
Well,
so if there's guardrails or boundaries.
Well, I think the only thing would be in terms of the organizational structure, where like I report to the town manager reports to the council, and then you advise the council. So I don't know that you can give me direction directly. I mean,
Right.
But on the other hand, I am happy to, accommodate your requests to the best of my ability. And it would just be if somehow or other it starts to interfere with the work I'm trying to get done, and then I would have to talk to the town manager and say, how can we do this? So, but I don't expect you're going to be doing anything like that. And I just want you to know I'm here to cooperate as much as I can, because I need you all. This is a huge responsibility. We are in a very difficult situation, and as much help as can be provided in terms of your insight, your guidance, your ideas, I need them.
Well, I was just thinking, I know I like the whole you can't audit your own work, I get it, but can you outsource any of the temporary stuff? That it's just like a one and done deal? It's like, you sound like you're spending a lot of time with this FEMA stuff, tidal basin. My question was, are the auditors involved with the tidal basin and all the documentation that you're submitting to FEMA? It sounds like you're drowning. That's what it sounds like to me.
That's what
right?
it does feel
It's
like.
like, can we just figure out how to spend money efficiently and get some help in here? Maybe you can get Lee County, or I don't know how it works, but you're struggling, man.
And thank you for picking up on that. I appreciate that. One of the things I struggle with is, do we bring in a temporary person? Because then we have to bring them up to speed, and then you invest all this time into bringing them up to speed, and then they leave. So I'm really happy that we're going to get the senior accountant in this other position, because then they will be helping us.
Yeah, that's why I'm talking about getting a regional software package where you can borrow people in these types of situations. I know it's too late now, but I just think you have relationships with the accountants. I mean, do you guys have any? I don't know how.
The accountant, to answer your other question, the accountants, the audit firm, they're not involved with tidal basin at all. They will be looking at the work after the fact, but they're not involved right now.
And who holds you're submitting all the documents to FEMA?
Yes, there's
and
a
then
grants
are
portal.
we keeping a copy of it, so if they lose it for some reason?
What we want to make sure we're doing, and we are, that's part of this process, is making sure we're all organized and everything can be accounted for on our side as well as on the grants portal.
And is that like a big time burn? I mean, you spend a lot of time with that?
I will be.
Yeah.
I will be.
Well, they wouldn't be necessarily auditing their own work, and I don't work for the accounting firm. I'm not trying to juice up their bills, but I'm just trying to help. Maybe you could hire them as a standalone project and have them be a partner with you on it, as long as it's not a conflict of interest, and then that frees your time up.
Right.
So,
Can they provide you a contingent worker to be able to process
Right.
accounts payable or process, transactions?
Yeah.
I can
It's
reach out
getting
to
two new
them.
people, so.
But that's an employee. What about just like, a contract person that you
Yeah.
hire for 6 months or whatever, and
I can reach out to them and see if they would be open to
someone
that.
who used to work in another city or something
Right.
that knows this kind of stuff would be good.
That's a good idea. And with the auditor, at least they're familiar with our environment and they understand, our structure, the accounting structure. And if it is someone from their team who has worked with us, then perhaps that would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and you gotta be careful as to, are they charging you full auditor rates or are they charging you temp labor rates at that point? 4 things that maybe I had thought about over the weekend related to this were probably, you're showing us the balance sheet, and that's good, but maybe cash forecasting to be able to look at going concern basis. At what point in time does, we're taking loans, we're having to repay loans, we're taking in income, but expenditures versus revenue, are we still, above water at that particular point in time, and looking at, so a going concern basis and cash forecasting.
And along with that, Joe, because this was interesting for me back in the day. It was something that got put together over time, but really delineating on revenue and expense. Because I was shocked as a town where we actually make money. Like water, we make a lot of money on reselling water, right? That's a big revenue number. A second one, which had a not quite as big a revenue, was code enforcement, but it had a big expense budget, like greater than the revenue. So, but then sort of water seeks its own level, and people complain we got a bunch of parking tickets and citations, but we've got to backfill this revenue, or I'm sorry, the expense side of it. So understanding, and to Jeff's point, I think it would be helpful for me at least, and knowing historically, pre-Ian, show a 12-month period of cash coming in matched up to expenditure, so we can see just that too. Because there was a lot of money in the past that went out on street, sanitation, stormwater, and those were big numbers, right? Our piece was for a town with a budget the size of what we have.
Yeah. Well, I everything you're saying, I know we need to do. I'm wondering how I'm going to do it.
Understood.
I want to. I mean, that is like my goal, is to
Sure.
do all these things and have all this.
That's not on the shelf?
It's
that kind of information should be shelved out.
it's not. I mean, well, if it is, I
we didn't even have a finance director for a long time.
Right, stuff went back down. So
It
everything.
was before the hurricane, though.
I know we didn't have one then either.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So,
When you say it's not on the shelf, like what are you thinking?
Shelf data, just showing your revenues and expenses, it's basic accounting.
Oh, you mean just running revenue and expense reports?
Yes, I mean, isn't that basically what you're asking for?
yeah, it was
Like an
always
income
on the
statement?
past. It was
Oh,
broken
sure.
out.
Oh,
Ledger
I'm sorry, I
format, so-
misunderstood. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that we certainly have that. It would just be. Yes, I can certainly do that. Then it'd just be going from there into projecting.
I don't think you're trying to make them do extra work.
It's the projections that would be
Yeah,
challenging.
that was the other.
That's
Understood. I guess, but there was some projected to identify the $3.7 million deficit, right?
the 3.7. Oh, you mean with yes,
Yeah,
yes,
to match up
yes.
cash to expenditure.
Yes, there was, for the budget purposes, yes, we did try to forecast out the revenue. Yes, we did do that. So we would have to update that. No, but I can certainly do past revenue and expenses, that and cash flow, that's,
Set a baseline.
yeah.
Broken out as much as possible, is basically what you're asking.
Yep.
Well, that should be with all the old audit stuff too. So.
Other one that came to mind was like around risk management. So what are the risks that we're monitoring? You brought up, Brian, you brought up insurance risk in the past. I mean, fraud is always out there at some point in time, especially when you have this much activity going on trying to rebuild. FEMA audit, I think you're on top of that, but it's always helpful to, talk about it. The other one, though, is financial. What are some of the, is the town faced with large lawsuit potential? Are there, one example might be large lawsuits that may be coming, resulting from the condo associations or trying to tear down the derelict properties, or I think another one out there was FEMA came up with a list of 106 properties. Does the town have any liability for that?
Well, those are good questions. I don't have the answer to that, but
Right, but I think it's something that we can track and we can kind of start to look at, okay, as we know about them, what's the potential of being found favorable, unfavorable, what's the liability that we're looking at?
Potential accruals.
Yeah, potential accruals.
well, I know the auditors do that as part of the audit when they prepare the financial report, so there wasn't anything extraordinary that I was aware of at the end of the.
Well, they're not aware.
Well, but, I mean, they're as aware of as I would be. I mean, I
Right.
wouldn't know any more than they would know.
But I think that's something we can help you think through. It's not something that you can necessarily have to go dig, but, we can have the conversation, think through, and then we can go find the answer.
Yeah.
Joe, I served on a municipal finance committee for many years, and we all would jump in, like we're jumping in with these great ideas about what we can do for you. But I think in the end, you have to sit with your people and maybe council and figure out what you really need from us, instead of us creating a lot of minutia because we're interested, and we can probably help, but maybe you don't need our help. I just feel like right now we're brainstorming. I feel like you've got to really sit down and think about this.
But identifying risks is important.
Yeah, but does that belong with this committee? That's all I'm saying. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I just don't want to, I don't want to see us kind of force a whole lot of functions into this committee if they already have it covered somewhere else.
Mhm.
I think these are all great ideas.
So when you were like doing the financing of municipalities, that we.
I was on the finance committee as an elected official,
Okay.
and the finance people, like Joe, would come in and say, oh, brother, they're asking me this question.
Right,
Well, they don't
right.
really, it just could get out of hand. Just too much. It's not even meddling, because we're all smart people. We all have good ideas, but you've got to really think about what you need. What would really be helpful.
I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate, that perspective. And I guess when I'm hearing all these ideas, I am taking them in because it helps me, like, to then go back and then think through all of this, because I really appreciate all of your input. I think it's valuable. So one thing that came to mind regarding risk, just to, maybe I should throw in there, one of the things the auditors do is they reach out to the attorneys, and then they find out from them what are the risks, and then I see a copy of the letter that comes from the attorney. So it might be workers' comp, it may be lawsuits, whatever the
Sure.
risks might be, they do provide that, and then they mention it in the footnotes if it's anything, material or significant. So I know that that's been done. Of course, we're going into new territory with the derelict properties, and that's just come up more lately, and that's probably issues there. We don't even have funding to do the demolition if we need to do that. So that's another issue.
So that's another question I have for you, is what I took away is you have a lot of moving parts on your funding, but you felt like you had enough money short term for the year?
For this year, yes, I do. We
So
do.
my next question would go, a lot of moving parts, is there a way to, shrink all the number of moving parts and just float a big bond? I don't know, that's not my area, I don't know how that works, but I know that these municipalities, they all do muni bonds. Can't you just do you know anybody that can come in and look at the balance sheet and say, hey, we could clean this? You see the commercials on TV about consolidating that. It just seems like you got a lot of moving parts there with that just takes more time. But if that's the way it works, then.
One of the issues, or one of the stipulations of the bridge loan is that we're not allowed to issue any more debt. So, but as soon as the bridge loan is paid off, or maybe something could be renegotiated with the state, but right now, our hands are tied in terms of new debt.
So I wanted to go back to the risk thing, again, because I worked quite a bit in that. The attorneys should be talking to you. I mean, you shouldn't have to wait until the attorneys talk to the auditors to talk to you. The attorneys should be giving you updates and whenever they have an update. So if they know something might be coming up, they should be evaluating and accruing properly for it.
I agree.
So maybe it's just getting a better relationship with the attorneys.
Probably. I think the way it works now, the attorneys like really work with the town manager, and so it's kind of like a roundabout way, and then if it's something significant enough, it comes down to me through the town manager. I'm not necessarily in direct contact with the attorneys other than on just day-to-day type items.
So maybe it's making sure that the town manager understands the importance and the responsibility to tell you.
Yes, that's a good point.
I think for me, just getting back to what Barbara was alluding to is, I see this as a dynamic. Joe has talked about how committees are not supposed to direct staff, but also it became very clear that he's appreciated the input. So if he's not getting what he needs and you're not getting what you need to come to us as a council, because obviously we charged you with doing more. Because obviously it was underutilized for, Brian and Michael talked about it, just a rubber stamp kind of thing. So the way I see it now, at least with this council, is we want to be whatever he needs, we want to get it to him. When you come to us, it's more of a user-friendly council, honestly. That's the environment we want to create. I think we've done a good job so far doing that. So whatever you need, he gets what, the input has been fantastic, but if it's more people that he needs, then maybe you can come to us and say, we'll take a load off of him. I don't know if that helps or not, Joe, or if that addresses what you were talking about, Barbara, or?
We just don't want it to burn out.
Sure, no. And
don't burn out.
Honestly, yes, having had that position empty for so long, and he's coming up on a year now, it's been a godsend that you're in this position, and we really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate the encouragement, so thank you for that. And I don't know really what to say other than what you've already provided. Your ideas, they're very good. I think for next time, I will have the revenue and expenditure and cash flow, at least for the past, and then see what I can come up with projecting forward. So that would be like a deliverable for you. And then, of course, progress on the ERP software.
Yeah, that's what maybe my final comment was going to be, use us as an ERP steering committee to, here's where we're at, here's where we're going, here's decisions that need to be made, and input from us on that.
And I'll also look into temporary help from the auditors, risk management. I'll talk to the town manager, just make sure that he's aware that I should.
He may not be aware, that's all,
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying. I'm just trying to add work, I'm just.
No, I think part of it is, I think there's so much happening, and everyone is just overwhelmed. The idea of passing information along is sometimes is
Well, the town attorneys are still trying to get up to speed too.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
even
Right.
recently.
So I have no criticism of not being in the loop. It's just the reality of the situation right now.
Okay, so that takes us through the agenda. Any additional comments from members?
Just a comment / question. For the next meeting, are we set in stone? I'm traveling Monday and Tuesday that week. If it's Monday, then I'll just have to be a miss. But if it's
When is it? When's it scheduled?
Monday, March 11th,
I think the idea was to try to get back to the second Monday of the month. I think that was
Okay,
when they normally would meet.
that's
but,
right. That's right.
Certainly at your discretion if you prefer a different day.
Well, if everybody else is good on the 11th, don't.
I won't be here. I'll be far away.
Do we have a motion?
Are most people here full-time?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, just travels now and again.
Would we want to move it to the 18th in that case?
That'd be fine with me.
That's the day after St. Patty's Day. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I think the 18th might be a board or a town council meeting.
Town council
Yeah,
meeting?
town council's on
And
the
where-
18th.
Oh, I got it.
And where is election being held?
Finally.
Because there is a beach, there will be a beach site. And it's probably in here. There will be a beach election site. I know that because I'm assigned to work it, but I don't know where it is. I bet it's here. That's the next day, so they might be setting up anyway. The 18th might be a problem for anybody.
Okay.
The plan is, I think, to have everybody in the town trailers by March. So I think that's where also the election things will be in the trailers.
Okay.
So then, would you guys be here on the 13th?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
coming back the 12th.
Okay.
Same.
That's a Wednesday then?
13th
Yeah,
is a Wednesday.
I'll be
I
back. I'll
have
be back.
meetings all morning on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. I mean, Mondays are really the only day I can do.
Your best day, yeah.
Well, they take time up, and he's busy. I don't know,
Yeah.
do we
Right.
need to?
So we do want to do the 25th?
Do
Oh, no,
we
wait,
need to do it
25th.
this frequently?
Nope, I'm out of town on the 25th.
No.
I'm trying to be sensitive to your time.
Yeah, right on.
What about the 4th?
Talking about March 4th?
That's also a town council meeting on the 4th, first and third
At the
Monday.
same time?
So you would have
First and third. So the 11th is out, 13th 's out.
And the 18th, we can't do because,
Council.
And
Push
the
it to next
18th 's out. Can we push the 1st and the 3rd? So the 4th and the 18th, the 25th?
I can't do that.
no, I'm out of town.
Okay.
I still work full-time.
March 8th? Friday, March 8th?
I'd have to skip a meeting, but.
I don't think, okay, so let's,
Does that work for everybody?
March 8th?
March 8th?
Friday.
See, this is, we're on the front end of Shrimp Fest, so unless
Let's get our
you're
priorities.
practicing.
Okay, excuse me, what date are we on now?
March 8th,
I won't be here. I'm leaving just.
okay. Okay, 15th,
It works. It all works for the most part. How many
That'd be
people
the
do-
Ides of March.
No knives.
Let's get, we had March 6th. What date are we on now? I'm sorry.
I'm moving towards March
I can't really do
15th.
Tuesday, Wednesdays, and
Yeah,
Thursdays.
All right, 15th?
It's a tax filing date for you.
It is.
I know.
Those are my partnerships. I'll be done.
I'm just having fun.
The 15th is fine.
Okay. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
March 15th.
March 15th.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Okay.
Here for the trailers.
Well, it's not set in stone yet, but hopefully the
It's
trailers.
just 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Somebody needs to make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, this was very good.